Okay, so this week we're gonna do DNS. We're gonna focus on dynamic updates with DHCP DNS records, which we talked about in the last session. And then we will do another lab when you come back after the holiday. So no class on next Monday, but the following Monday, we'll have one more session. My final review, I think I'm just gonna post the video. It's not required for you to complete and submit the review, but I recommend that you look at the final review questions and be able to study for your final exam. Final exam will be on Canvas. I will remind you when we come back before the holidays, before Thanksgiving, about the final exam. Okay, so grab a hard drive, external hard drive, and then copy your folder onto your desktop. And then open up your VirtualBox, click Add, find your desktop folder, open the VirtualBox. Okay, so I had added my server here, and then before I started, I want to go into setting. The reason why I have you set up the network as host only adapter for now, because I don't, if you are using somebody's VirtualBox that they accidentally use it on the drive and it runs DHCP, I don't want it to give out IP addresses everywhere. So we want to keep it on host only, to that local computer only. Okay. And then for your system, make sure we give it 8 gig of RAM and at least 4 core for processor. So once I have those things, I can go ahead and click OK and start. So with that, we have done 1 through 8. Now, even with that amount of RAM and processor, you do see that sometimes your virtual machine is going to be slow. That's okay. Remember that, it is a virtual machine, so you got to be patient with it. So once it starts up, you're going to click on input keyboard and Control-Alt-Delete, because, even if you click in it, it might not let you log in. And we're going to log in. So we logged in successfully to our server. So click input at the top and then insert Control-Alt-Delete to get the authentication page that you see, and then put in the password. Now your server manager will likely load a few seconds later. You got to give it a chance to go ahead and load. And we want to configure IP address. Our server has to use static IP. It doesn't matter what role you are assigning. I think we've done this with the DHCP server when we did our lab like a few weeks ago. So make sure that you use a static IP address, right? So when your server manager for your local server information pop up, which it takes a minute or so to load, we want to make sure that we put in a static IP. I let you choose your static IP. This is a class this is a class B address that we previously used. So for the X value, you can choose any number in this range. You can use up to 254, but I wanted to kind of leave a couple, so in case we need to use it for later. So you can do like 101, 120, any value for X right here is okay. But your default gateway, your router, is the .1. Okay. We've done this before when we did the DHCP lab. Okay, so I'm here. Close this. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the local server. And on the local server, we want to set up the static IP address first. Okay. So give it a second to load like this, and then you're going to click this link right here. So right now it's obtaining an IP address from the DHCP. We don't want that. So we want to put in a static IP. So click that link that's shown on the screenshot, and then that's going to take you to the Ethernet. You can double click or right click and choose properties. And then on its property, you can set up the IP address. So that's the first step always. Yes. Yeah, for now, IPv6 enable is fine. We're only going to use version 4. So click that link, and then it's going to take you to the Ethernet properties, and you can double click and choose property, or right click and choose property. So I'm here on the property sheet. I'm going to go ahead and click version 4, click its property, and this is where I specify the IP address. So we can do 172, sorry. Dot. I believe it's 16.06. So 16.0, and I'm going to go ahead and choose a number, and you can choose any number between in that range that I had highlighted. Dot. I'll go ahead and choose 127. Your subnet mask, you can simply click it and it's going to fill that out for you, or you want, you can type it in. So we're going to use a class full static IP address. And then for our default gateway, that's always going to be a .1. So 172.16.0.1. Now, since we are going to hold the role for the DNS, it is going to be exactly like the IP address that we specify here. So click into the DNS server. We're going to type 172.16.0.127. It has to be exactly matching because itself is a DNS. We don't have a secondary DNS, so leave that blank. And we're going to click OK. And once that update, you are going to close. And close. And then we're going to get out of the Ethernet property sheet. And give it a chance, maybe a few seconds for it to update the IP address on this page, or you can click to the dashboard and click back. Okay. All right. So what we did was we specify the IP address, and again, X, do not put X, put a number inside this range, like 104, 111, 200, 201, whatever number. As long as it's within this, we're good. And then these are the same. So once we have a static IP, you see how it's update like that. We want to show that our version 4. Now, if you want to use version 6, then you can change to static IP for version 6. But we're only going to configure for version 4 today. What we're going to do is once you're here, then you can click dashboard. And it's going to take you back to your server manager that you see earlier, right? This is your dashboard. We're going to click add roles and feature. We've seen this before. So what we're going to do is, sorry, I started the step again here, but we're going to keep the numbers so it doesn't confuse you. I'll fix that later. Okay. So we're going to do add a role, and then we're going to proceed to the next section. So go next, and we're going to do role base. Go next. And since we only have one server, so this is going to be the server that we have. I wonder why it's picking up the 192. Maybe because it's obtained from this. Hold on 1 second. Yes, we can proceed, even though the IP address is incorrect, but it's showing the 192.168.56.101. Okay. So we're gonna proceed. We're gonna go next, and then we're going to select DNS, which is this one. Okay, again, check the box for DNS. And it tells you that it's gonna add these features: remote server, server administration tools, role administration, and the DNS tool. We're gonna go ahead and add these features. Yeah, that's strange. I just configure IP, but it shows this. So it's saying that there's no static IP for the computer. If the IP changes, then it won't be able to connect. We can continue. Hold on a second, that bothers me, so. Maybe I should disable version 6. Let me check. It shouldn't matter though. Everything's good. Okay. So we're gonna add role and feature. You can still install it with the, I guess we have to. It's not seeing the static IP. Maybe have to restart, but we're gonna select DNS, add its feature. Now in this particular exercise, I wrote it as 2 separate components, and so, but you can definitely do Active Directory and DNS together. I think it's telling me that it's running out of space, but add features. And then we're going to go ahead and go next. And then next again to add all the appropriate packages. So here it says DNS server integration with Active Directory services automatically replicates DNS data along with directory services, and it is easier to manage. If you install ADS or Active Directory domain service, requires DNS server to be installed on the network. So that means that anytime that you want to have domain services for Active Directory, you have to have a DNS, right? That's just a requirement for Microsoft Server. And Active Directory allows you to be able to modify objects and subject in one database for one domain and be able to replicate it, meaning that carry that same changes out to other subdomains. So that way you don't have to repeat the process multiple times. So here, it asks you to answer this question. It says, what type of services should be integrated with DNS server? And we see that here. It tells you that Active Directory domain services, right? Your ADS. So when you look at a job and it tells you, no Microsoft Server 2019 or 2022, and then you have to know ADS, that's Active Directory domain service. And that is normally incorporated with DNS. So you can find your answer under the things to know. And then we're going to go next. I lost my mouse capture. Can you install DNS while installing Active Directory? Yes. You can select multiple boxes. You can do DHCP, ADS, and DNS together. As long as, you select the appropriate features. Normally, it will prompt you to do that automatically. I think my storage is limited. All right, so once you get here, you just click install and you wait a few minutes. When your bar reaches the end and it shows you completed, that's good, then you can proceed, okay? So we're gonna install, wait about 5 minutes. When it's done, we're gonna close. So installation, just add in the packages, the software packages that runs that service. It's not fully configured. We learned that from our other lab that we did for the DHCP. So once that's done, we want to be able to set that up. So you're going to do a forward lookup zone with the new zone. We talked about that last time. That is going to write the A record, the host A records. That's going to associate your IP address to the domain that you're going to create. Second, you are going to, it's because we're not using version 6 IP address, it's still going to create the quadruple A, but it's tied to the dynamic IP address for version 6. And then if we are successful with dynamic updates with DHCP, then we're going to have a pointer record, the PTR. Okay. So when I'm here, it's completed. I'm going to go ahead and click close. And then now we want to, I think we already did this at the beginning. So this part right here, just making sure that you have an a static IP. And if it notifies you that it doesn't have a static IP, you can go in and change it again to make sure. Yeah, so we succeeded the installation for the DNS. There's nothing flagged as notification. Usually if you see like a yellow warning flag, that means that you have to fix the problem. Okay. All right. So I already did the static IP at the beginning, then I don't have to check that. But if you don't do it at the beginning, you have to do that before you configure your server. And at this point, I want to take a screenshot of my IP address. It's a good habit that you start screenshotting when you are going through the process of configuration. So in case you need to troubleshoot, you can go back and look at your screenshot, right? So I would screenshot the IP address that's shown in the middle there. Right here. And that will be for 19.4a. Now, once you have your installation for that role, your manager console is going to be listed under tools. Okay. And as you can see, I have a DNS right here, right? That didn't exist before. So you can always access the management console by clicking the DNS management console. You can also use, you know, the console command for Windows, but that's the easiest way is go through tools. And here is your management console. It's going to list the computer that you identify or created the role for DNS, which is our system right here. Normally, you want to rename this before you start the installation. For example, you want to name it so that way it would fit the enterprise on how you would identify your server, because otherwise it would be difficult to identify like HQ server from other server. Okay. But this is the system that we have. And then now see how it has the default folder for the zone. When you click it, you can expand this option to see. But it tells you that once you're in here, you can right click the server. And then just select a new zone. Yeah, if it's slow, sorry. All right, then go next. Now we are going to do a primary zone. So that means that we can make a copy. We talked about this last time, right? Of a zone that can be updated directly to the server. So whenever that there's change or update with the zone, right, that relates to my domain, it's going to impact the primary zone. The secondary zone, remember what we learned? It's read only. It doesn't store any kind of updates. So it's just a copy, a duplicate of the information from another server. So you would only do a secondary zone if you just want like a duplicate of the information. And then you can also create a stub zone, which only contains some of the records of the actual domain. So we're going to use the primary zone. We're going to go next. And then it is a forward lookup zone. So we are going to do FQDN to IP address. And it tells you that here. It translates the DNS name into an IP address for the network service. So we're going to go next. Okay. So I did a new zone. I proceed with the primary zone. I selected the forward lookup zone, which is default. And then you can enter your domain, right? Now, if you do this and if you want to do like a public DNS, you have to go through IANA registration because they hold the list of public DNS. You know, and then it will be associated with the registered public IP. Now, a lot of times when we register for a domain, we just leave someone else's domain. Like you can go to GoDaddy, AWS, someone who already have certain domain, you can acquire that domain. But for internal, we can just make a domain names zone. So we're gonna go ahead and type in your full name, and then you can do a .com, like what it shows here, right? For example, newzone.microsoft.com. We can just do. Sorry, it's a little slow. So enter your name and then a .com and then go next. And what it's going to do is going to create this file called the .dns file. And in that file, it will be associated with the record. So, but if you already have something in existence, you can also browse to your existing file. So we're going to create a new file name. And here, right, we're going to proceed to the new zone file. And what we're going to do is we are going to do not allow dynamic updates. Let's take a look at the option closely, right? If you select this, allow both non-secure and secure dynamic updates, you're going to make your DNS vulnerable to a lot of different form of attacks, right? We want dynamic updates, but we want secure dynamic updates. Therefore, we need to use DNSSEC, right? So right now, we don't want dynamic updates. We're going to select this. And we're going to, by default, it selects that for you. And we're going to go next and finish. Why is that option there? It is because the legacy server, well, let's say that you upgrading from 2000 and then you went to 2008 and then 2016, you gradually update from the older OS. The older OSs did not have secure dynamic updates. It only have regular non-secure updates. So this is why Microsoft kept it that way, even though it is a flaw. Okay. Okay. So once we're done, right, we have created, if you look under your forward lookup zone, right, you have your .com there and you have your SOA and your NS there. Right, those are the records that we learn about. Now, if you want to do reverse lookup zone where it does the IP to the domain, you can set up the reverse lookup zone, right? By creating a new zone, right-click it, new zone, and you can add it. Now, these trust points, you can have domain establishing direct trust. And we have to also manages the directory services with the domain across. But next, we're going to do the ADS installation. So we can close this now. That's your DNS manager. And notice that it show up here too. Okay. All right, come back to the dashboard, add roles, go next, role base. And now it updates your IP. We're gonna go ahead and proceed. And when you look at Active Directory, there are multiple options, right? The regular one that you want is the second option right here. Again, Active Directory domain services, okay? Now, I can install the lightweight directory services that has less feature. And if you click on it, it tells you the difference. The LDS, it is very limited to like a single server. So if you want to be like branching out like an enterprise, you don't want the lightweight version. If you do Active Directory with certificate authority, which we normally do when we have web application and web services, you need to also add that, which is the certificate services there. And then there are rights management and other things. So in a normal enterprise environment, you would select these options. But for now, to start, we're going to select ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services. that includes group policies, and it also includes the LDS options that you have. And then we're going to add the features. We're going to proceed and go next. And then right here, right? Oh, I should go back. I should do the Active Directory so I don't have to do it later. Sorry. Or I'm sorry, DHCP. I'm going to do DHCP, but not fully configure it. I think we're just going to do a portion of it for updates. All right. We're going to add the feature. So I have Active Directory and DHCP, and then go next. And then here it talks about the ADDS requirements on what they recommend. So look at number 36. This is where you can find your answer before you click next. So it says things to note. To help ensure that users can still log on to the network in case of the server outage, install a minimum of 2 domain controllers. So you can have multiple domain controller. You can also have one that's primary and the other ones that are not primary. That was from Windows NT Day. We used to call it PDC and BDC. But Active Directory require DNS server on the network, so you cannot have Active Directory without DNS, like what we said earlier. Okay, so read this information. Active Directory, it is a database that contains users, computer groups, devices, right, systems on the network. It also allows you to manage how those objects are accessing or subject that's accessing the objects, which is ultimately access management for your Windows Server environment. And then this is the DHCP. We're going to proceed, and then we're going to install. So we should have multiple domain controllers in case of outages, right? So that way the users can still be on the network. Otherwise, you're going to have outages. So this is going to take a few minutes like last time. When it's done, we can close and proceed. Any questions? Pretty easy. So after we have Active Directory, then we're going to take our domain and we're going to bring it up, right? So whenever that you make it into a domain controller, you promote it. Even if you configure it in the last time we configured the DNS, right now, once we have the Active Directory services included, we're going to take our DNS and that has Active Directory, we're going to promote it into a domain controller. This domain controller, we can make it on top of the forest where it controls others. But like it mentioned that you might have multiple domain controllers, so that way you don't have a single point failure. So we are going to go through the process of setting up your domain controller. I leave out the users and groups. I think some of you already had practices in CIS27 and other classes with me. We can come back to that. If I revise the lab in where we would join a Windows 10 system into the domain, so that way you know how to do that, we will need to create the account for that system in order to join it. Okay. So it's done now, right? We're going to click close, and you notice that there's a warning notification at the top. We're going to go ahead and click that. And it tells me that I need to do a post-deployment configuration. Even if I did the installation, it's not complete yet, right? We're going to have to configure. So we can click this, and then we can click Promote Server Domain Controller. You can also go through Tools and ADDS Management Console to do that. Okay, so what I did was I clicked the little warning notification, and I click the blue link, right? The blue link that is provided to promote it. So it says that right there. Promote this server to the domain controller link. And then I will proceed. So here, right, you want to make sure that you specify add a domain controller in the existing domain, but we're going to make it in a new for us. A brand new network, a brand new domain with the domain controller. So you are going to select the third option, not the first. And then in the root, we're going to specify our full name. And realistically, this is your company's name, right? And then go next. Now for the functional level, we want to go with the prior version. So I think 2016 is okay. If you have older OSs in your network, you want to roll back more like 2012, 2008. I think 2019 accommodate 12 and a little bit prior. So we want to have some legacy. But here we're just gonna use the default for now. I mentioned 2019, there's no option, it should be 16. This is a fix. And then we want to make a password for my recovery or restore mode. So put in so keep this 2016. And you should not use the same password to log in, but to make it easy on the lab. And it tells you, it says delegation for DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found. So you have to set up the delegation. So you can select, you can do show more, and it tells you that the delegation cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found. It does not run Windows Server, or it does not run Windows Server. If you are integrating with an existing infrastructure, you need to manually create the delegation. Can I proceed like with this warning? Sure. You just need to make sure that you have the DNS delegation. Otherwise, your DNS is not fully functional. That's what it's saying. Okay. And then we can proceed like this. Now, even if you try to check this, it grays it out because you don't have a parent zone. So we're going to go ahead and click next. And then for the net BIOS, it should pre-fill this, or you can just type in your full name without the .com. So net BIOS is resolved by name, right? This is the pre-DNS era, but Microsoft still integrate net BIOS. And so it puts in my name without the .com. We're going to go ahead and click next. And it's going to tell you, it's going to give you the path of where your log files is, your sys volume, and your database. For security people and IT people, this is important. You need to know where this is, right? Ultimately, it's under the Windows folder. I've seen this come up for forensic, for other issues, for, so we can find the log information under the NTDS in Windows folder under the C drive. So this is why I have you screenshot it. So you know exactly where it is. Okay, so screenshot that, the path of your log files, your database folder, and your sys volume. Go next. And this is the summary of all the things I have selected. Go next. And it's going to take a little bit to verify all the information, and it's going to give you the install option. Click that and wait. So to make a home lab environment, right? What you can do is you can create a virtual machine like this with an ISO. Use VirtualBox. You can set up hosts only, and then you can also add a second adapter and be able to connect another virtual machine to it. And you can see if you can do the security configuration, and you can see if you can attack it. So I can use a Kali machine trying to attack the server machine, and if I'm successful, then my attack works, right? That way you don't have to go and attack someone else illegally. So you can definitely do that. You can create as many virtual machines as your system hardware can allow, and software can allow, of course. And so it tells me that, yes, I have to do delegation. I have to manually create it, right? Everything is complete. I'm going to do the install. And once that's done, right, ADS will show up on my server manager dashboard. So if you intend to be a Windows Server administrator, get knowledgeable in ADDS. It is highly demanded that you know how to, and even in policy management and security for Windows environment, I encourage you to dive deeper and learn it really well. There's always job requirement for it. Yeah. So it's just saying that it cannot store it back into the existing. It's still gonna let you finish. It's just, the zone cannot be replicated to all the units that are domain control. Enterprise. Yeah, so you are at domain administrator right now, and it's saying that you don't have the privilege to do that. To configure it. So that means that we have to create an account at enterprise level, go through and try that, but yeah, you can just screenshot that for me and you can submit it like that. Let me get to I did that too. Yeah, mine's just a little. Yeah. Yeah, it might be slow if it's crashing and it's I had it like 100. Of course. Crashing. You're not running it from the drive, right? You run on the desktop. I think maybe the C when I created the virtual machine is kind of like it. Just you have to be patient with it. Mine is a little slow too. But once it gets going, it's not bad. Make sure you give it enough RAM and processor. Yeah. Features available specific server fail. The drive thing. This one is. Are you at part B? Yeah. Try the clone. But yeah, when after you transfer, delete the log of the other file, the log and the state file. Or you can run it like that and see if it'll open. Sometime it doesn't open. Yes, I think some of you are getting the storage error or when it crashes. Check there is another folder. It's called CIS40A VM, and inside it there might be another server virtual machine, like a clone machine. You can try using that one. And the only downside is if you are kind of far ahead, you have to configure, but it gives you a chance to practice. Once you do it a few times, it's very quick. Okay. So once you have set up your zone, you are going to do the DNSSEC. I think that most of us learned that this is a way that we can securely, right, update our information with the controllers in the forest. Okay. Let me see. It's still not responding. Yeah, it does take. Sometimes it takes a second to. So
No, I finished my lab already.
okay. All right, see you.
All right, thank you.
So once you establish that, once your domain and all your zone, you can also select the DNSSEC option. See something in this room. Everybody is so sneezy today. Or maybe the wind. Yeah, I'm still not able to. Questions? Yeah, because you are now your new domain. Yeah, you just log on using the same password. It's just now you are the domain administrator instead of your local machine administrator. So once you promote it, it's part of that network now. Your account becomes a domain administrator. So yeah, your delegation is you have to manually. Yeah, if you, everything is default so far, right? It's saying that, it's saying that even if you have a domain controller, it has to be delegated, it has to be given a task, an assignment to do certain things. That's what, so we'll consider that in the, this. You make an enterprise account. Did not let you go forward with that anyways, right? Yeah, I think you have to make an enterprise account, otherwise you have to make some kind of, connection.
On the virtual machine, I gotta make a,
On the Active Directory, I can't show. Mine just, like some of you are having the same issues, right? It's black or it's crashy, so let's see. We're gonna save. I was still trying to write to memory, and then I'll try to reboot and see if it's giving me any kind of update on the thing. So normally you would see that the DNS and DHCP and Active Directory are used together. When you're part of that domain, you would need to obtain an IP address from the server, and your account has to exist in Active Directory. Now let's say that I go in and I added a computer, or I added a new user or a group or whatever, I can have it replicated across multiple domains or the subdomains, and also I can have it refresh, right? So the last part is we can have it update statistically every 60 minutes by default, or you can change that. You can also have the records dynamically updated. And so when the lease end, it's going to change, right? The PTR record. And then you can use, and in the security world, we want to be able to look at the events and the actions that happen on our server. So you can audit the log files, and it would give you the location for that. See if I'm successful restarting it. We're so close. Nothing. I'm gonna have to power off. I don't think I can turn it back on where it was. Okay, I think it should be able to do that. Any other questions? So with the exercise, if you're able to complete most of it, you should be able to examine the records or configure the DNS so that way it established the records for your domain name system, right? So that was the whole point for you to understand that you can, once you go through the configuration process and then after the installation for the DNS, you should be able to establish different type of zones, that you can use. Now, if you're interested in this and you want to go for the Microsoft certifications, this is one area that you have to pass in order to be Microsoft certified, is to look, to be able to set up your DNS Active Directory and DHCP. On the Azure certification, there is a component for the cloud-based server administration as well. So this is useful because, on the cloud, a lot of the times you are going to use virtual machine instances that's similar to what you've seen in our VM. Yeah, you have to manually finish verifying. Once that's all of this is done. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be the network ID, network. Okay, so this is a class B. Yeah, when you guys do the network ID, only the first two octet, not three. Yeah, that's fine, you can check that. You can't proceed without, your enterprise give the LDS. So. So, go back to your manager. Go back to your DNS manager. Oh, yeah, so the close. Cancel. And then, also it won't let you do the reverse. That's fine. So for 66, I think some of you, you cannot proceed, so you don't have to answer that one. And then,
71, part A.
yeah. So 66 to 71, you have to answer. You can just do part B. I saw a hand.
30, the first two, 72, 15,
It's black.
but I don't think it's in a word. But you didn't find it in the reverse?
Yeah,
Reverse lookup?
I'm like, right, try it.
It didn't work for me. I got an N. I got the about, now that's okay, all. Got it.
17, 16.
Yeah, so it's 172, only the first two.
But just take a screenshot of it and then.
If you put the 0, yeah, you can't proceed here because it's saying that you have to be enterprise level once you promote it. So right now, you have to be administrator, which is under that privilege, and you don't have the right permission or to modify that, right? So just screenshot that and you can skip 66 and 71. Yeah, you have to elevate to the next permission group. So 66 and 71, you cannot cancel. Yeah. Yeah, your network ID is the first two octet, 172.16, no 0.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do it both ways.
Okay, so I have some questions regarding, so we don't do 66 to 71. When you can't even click finish, so screenshot that and add that for me. You have to be enterprise admin level in order to proceed to that. So that means that before you configure this part, you have to log in as enterprise admin, and the current account that you have is a domain admin, which is not an enterprise admin. Because you elevate your systems to an enterprise level, you have to create an account for that or add to the group in order to modify your zone. So that's what it's saying. But you need to know that the reverse lookup is rarely used anyways. That's why a lot of the times we don't set up the reverse lookup zone. But this is, and then your network ID, because it is a class B, you're going to type in 172.16 only and leave the rest blank, right? Because when you look at the IP address, this is network, right? It's class B, and then the rest is host. So your network ID should be network. If it's a class A, only the first octet. Okay? If it's a class C, 3 octet. So we normally try to type in everything, but yeah, only the network ID because it needs to be routed.
Let's see what's
Okay, all right. See, when I log in right now, right, I become an administrator of my domain, which is the .com that I created. And you can go into Active Directory users and computer to check your accounts and create accounts and enterprise account to test. But, all right, so we mentioned that 66 to 71, we can ignore. And then you can try to do, you have to install DHCP in order to have the manager, and then you can try to do that. Okay. So I'm gonna open up DNS. And then I can do reverse. And when I try to create a new zone, right, this one. Or lookup. So we only have the SOA record and the NS record. But if you click on this, what you can do is you can set up additional records. So we're gonna do DNSSEC and then sign zone, which takes you here. Go proceed. Right? So it tells you here that this is the domain name system security extension. This is for data integrity and authentication and, you know, so we want to have DNSSEC. Go next. And then we're going to use the default setting, which is the customized zone setting parameters. Or I'm sorry, use default settings for the sign zone. And go next. So I think some of you, this is where you went wrong, right? When you go through that step, this is what happens. You go and you select this, right? I'm going to unsign it so I can sign it back again. You select the wrong option. That's why you're getting that error. DNS, sign the zone. You go here. And I think you just click next right here to customize. You don't have the privilege to customize. So you have to click use default setting and sign zone. And then you go next. And it should finish. I know this works because so I think that you misread the instruction. Right? And then go finish. And then for the reverse. And then we're going to create this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to select all servers running domain controllers in the forest. So the top one, go next. And we're going to do IP versions 4. Proceed. And here, I think this is where you end, right? 172.16. It's a class B, classful address. Go next. And then we're going to do only secure updates. Earlier, that one was grayed out, right? And then you get stopped here. So that's fine. Screenshot this part. And we can skip 66 to 72. However, if you have the right permissions, you should be able to see your records for the reverse lookup. But when you look at the forward lookup zone, under your .com, you should be able to see. And you can also set up the host name. Let's say we would do like host. And then the IP address. Mine was 127. So now we have a host record. Yeah, you can make a new record by creating them and then assign it to the IP address. Okay, lastly, and then we'll do attendance and we'll call it a day. So we are gonna go back to DHCP and then we're going to set up the version 4 property, update statistic every 60 minutes, and then that's it, right? So go to tools. DHCP management console. Come back here. Expand, right click. Go to properties. And then for your DNS, you can specify how you want to do. Always dynamically updates DNS records. You can also update DNS records if requested by the client. So basically I go here, I right click, go to properties, and I should be able to see this option and specify that there. This is how you can set up dynamic updates between DNS and the DHCP server. All right, let's stop recording. We can do attendance.